So, I just want to introduce you to my new program, my Go-To Shoe. And so before I start up, I think I need to share with you a little bit about my journey. And I'm only going to give you one little tidbit tonight, because you'll be getting more of these as the weeks go on. But first off, I just want to welcome you, and I hope you listen in, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope more than anything that you get something from it that you can do, that you can keep moving on with your life. Because what happens in loss is a lot of times you go through a loss and you've lost a loved one and you kind of get stuck. Sometimes paralysis sets in and the grief becomes overwhelming and you're not able to do things that you normally would do. So now you're in your new normal. I know you've all heard that before, the new normal when you've lost someone. But I'm referring to when you do lose someone, how to keep moving forward. So my hope is that as you listen to what I have to say, it will strengthen you and help you to keep moving forward. You know, I always say my hashtag line is hashtag keep it moving, because that's what I've tried to do. So I'm going to give you my little story, one of my stories. It's 2014, October 27th, 2014. And my husband and I were sitting on the couch. You know, it was a game night, Monday Night Football. He's sitting there watching the game. I'm sitting there flipping through one of my Vogue magazines, because you don't know it, but I love fashion, so I'm flipping through my magazines. And my son's friend calls and says, "Miss Johnson." I said, What? He says, "Is Mr. Johnson there?" I says, "Yeah." He said, "Well, can you give me the phone? Let me talk to him." I said, "Sure, you talk to him." So I gave him the phone. Oh, goodness. You know, as I say this, I begin to hyperventilate. As I talk to you about loss, in this podcast, you're going to hear me laugh, but you're also going to hear cries. So don't get yourself worked up about it. Just keep listening. So anyway, see, I'm getting through it, but it's going to be part of the way this is always going to go, because I don't know when a tear is going to come. It just flows. It just comes out, whether I want it to or not. So Brad said, "Pauline, Hollis has been shot." And he got off the phone. We ran up the stairs. I remember running up the stairs. And as I run up the stairs, I'm praying to God. I'm begging God. I am begging God that nothing has happened to my son, other than, you know, that he's still alive. That was really my thought, is that just let him be alive. We'll take care, even if he's a vegetable, we'll take care of him. And if you think about it, the truth be told, Hollis would never, ever want to be a vegetable. He would not. He would not want to be where somebody's taking care of him. Anyway, we run upstairs, we get dressed. I call my daughter, Mashia, and I said, "Mashia, Hollis has just been shot." So she came over and she met us here at the house. And her friend came with her. And as Brad and I, we got on the road, and this was, they said he was at the Washington Hospital Center in D.C., and Brad and I were driving downtown DC and driving on 95 to DC. And I grabbed Brad's hand at one point in time in the car. And I don't know if this was the case, but I think that's when Hollis really succumbed and he didn't live. I don't know. I'm just thinking that could have been because we just grabbed each other's hands at one point in time. But the whole time, I have to tell you, I was just praying that God would just keep my son alive, keep our son alive. You know, it's been 10 years and the story never really gets easier. And I know sometimes some of you, people have asked me, when does it get better? It doesn't. Let me put it this way. It's always there. You move on because you are better, but you know, it still hurts. It still hurts. The pain is still there, but it's not like you lose someone and then tomorrow you're better, or 6 months you're better, or 1 year you're better. It's been 10 years. And I don't walk around like I'm in total, in a bad way, but God continues to keep me. So I'm not in that grief-stricken mode like I was 10 years ago, when you first hear it, it's just kind of overtakes you at a point in time. So anyway, let me finish my story. So we get to the Washington Hospital Center, and it's really interesting. We go in, and we said, I'd like to see my son, Hollis Johnson. I give him all the information, and they say, oh, well, you all just go sit in this little room. They had a place for us to sit. And we're sitting there, and we're sitting there, and we're sitting there. We're walking in and out the room. More of Hollis's friends come. At the time he had a fiance, she came. Everybody's coming into the hospital, and we're sitting in this little small room. And finally, and I didn't share this with you, I am an ordained preacher. So I said, I'm gonna pull the preacher card. I go to in the vestibule or the hallway, and there's a phone sitting there, and I go to the phone, and the guy answers. I says, I want to see my son. And they say, well, Mrs. Who are you? Hollis Johnson is my son. And he said, I said, look, I'm a preacher. I want to see my son, and I want to see him now. He said, ma'am, we'll be out in a minute. We'll be out in a minute. So they came out, they got me. They came and got us, the whole family. And they took Brad and I in the room. And for some reason, I know my daughter was there. We were all there, but I only remember Brad and I being in the room. I don't know why that is. I only remember Brad and I in the room. And Hollis is laying on the gurney. And I began to rub his head. Gently just rub his head. And the nurse came in and says, you can't touch him. And I thought to myself, I'm going to touch I would touch whoever I want to touch. I didn't say that to her, but I was just still touching his head. And I took my hand off of him because, while she was there, but as soon as she left, I just put my hand, and I kept saying, Hollis, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And the scripture, that scripture, but the word that came to me when I was rubbing his head is that the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. And I knew from that day on that I was going to have to be the one to eulogize my son, because God had told me, it was clear, crystal clear, that that's what I was to do. So I'm talking to Hollis, just wishing he was alive. Brad never uttered a word. He didn't say anything. One of my pastor, who he wasn't at the church at the time, but he knew Hollis, and he called. He said, Paul, he's all right. I said, they've killed my son. And when I say they, I don't know who did it, but somebody did. They've never found, they've never found the person who committed that crime. That person could be long gone themselves by now, because Hollis, I want to share, and I remember sharing this with the policeman, because I wanted people to know that Hollis was not a street guy. He really wasn't street. He wasn't somebody always in the street. Now, he loved to party. He loved to be on the dance floor. He loved to dance, and he loved to be with his friends, and he loved cooking. He loved food. But I just wanted you to know that he wasn't a bad kid. He had a full-time job. He actually worked in Freddie Mac, and he was in there. I don't know if it was procurement, but he did kind of some of the same work that I do. But he had been working for the last 10 years. He graduated, has his bachelor's degree. So he had a regular job and worked every day. And so I was saying that to the cops because I wanted to know that he was not just somebody off the street that just, hanging out with the wrong people. Hollis had come home that night, and he was going into his condo, and somebody shot him going into his condo. And so that's, I didn't even look at the video for a whole year before I even looked at his video of what had happened to him. So I don't know. Anyway, that's the story. That's one of my stories, in fact, about what had happened to Hollis, and that changed our lives. Just like I know it has changed many of your lives who've lost your sons and who've lost your daughters. And as I sit here and talk to you, I just think about, to me, there's nothing worse than really losing your child. Just for me, that's just nothing worse. And so when I go to work every day and things go wrong and things are happening, I don't really get too concerned about it, because to me, that's fixable. But life is not fixable when somebody dies. My daughter said to me one time, she says, Mom, I really think Hollis lived his purpose. He was here for as long as he was supposed to be here. And he was like the life of the party in our home. The party didn't start till Hollis got here. You know, he'd always be making fun and always had these sayings. You know, he would have these say, "Oh, that's what you're doing now? That's what you're doing now?" If I would say something to his dad that he didn't think was right, he'd say, "Oh, that's what we're talking about. That's what we say." He always had a saying that would always make you think and think, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't say what I said." You know, really make you think. Because Hollis was one of these people who was about truth. You might not like what he had to say, but he would speak truth. And sometimes we don't like to hear what truth is about. And Hollis was that kind of person. But anyway, that's the story of what happened. And after Hollis, that night, you know, we told family and we came home, and it was just it was like surreal. It just wasn't real anymore. It just felt like what happened to our lives. And the one thing I wanted to share with you all is, and I'm thinking about it now because my daughter, I have a daughter and I have a stepson. Well, they call him now a bonus son, and I have my grandchildren, and you know, a mother. And I don't know if everybody's this way, but the way I am, I kind of just made sure that they were okay, but I really didn't think about how they felt about their loss, because each one of us looks at loss personally for how it affects each one of us. So the way it affected me was one way, the way it affected my daughter and my son and my grandchildren, and then even Brad's mother and his brothers. There's 4 brothers, he has brothers. It all affects each person differently. So as you're grieving, you have to go through that grieving process. There were times when Brad would sit on one end of the couch and I'd sit on the other end of the couch, and either one of us would just weep. We would just weep. It would never be at the same time, and we'd never say anything to either of us. He wouldn't say nothing to me, and I wouldn't say anything to him. We wouldn't talk about the tears that were shedding, but you knew it was because it was something that had happened that our lives would never be the same again. So that is the story of losing Hollis Bradford Johnson, and so that's the first start of this journey through loss, and that's why I call it my go-to shoe, because as you walk this journey of life, it's not always the same shoe. Some shoes are tighter than others. Some shoes hurt. Some shoes, like slippers, are loose and floppy, and it doesn't really matter. Some have treads, and as you're walking that journey, the tread grips and holds tight. So every day there's my go-to shoe. And the one thing I remember, and this is kind of interesting, HR person said to me, "You need to take time off." And I thought to myself, how dare she tell me what I need to do? Because once you've lost someone, you don't want anyone to tell you what to do. You want to grieve, you want to cry, you want to shout, you want to scream. You just want to be in your own space. And I listened to her, but I could see when she would see me in the hallway, because I went to work 1 month after Hollis passed. He passed October 27th. I was off for Thanksgiving week, and when Thanksgiving week was over, I went back to work. And for me, that was good. It was better for me, because I just felt like I had a chance to just start to think about other things. But the one thing that's not good, you have to go through the grieving process. You have to. There's not even a choice in that, because if you don't go through the grieving process, it comes out in other ways. And to be honest, I think I held back on my grief process. And that's why I want to share with you, when those tears come out, just let them flow. Whatever happens, you just have to go through it, allow the grief to come in, and then allow it to leave. Because you're not going to be in grief 24/7. You're going to cry and you're going to scream. And again, everyone is going to be totally different. Because what I did was one way, with Brad, what he did with his grief would be another way. So each one of us is going to feel it differently. But the one thing about it is that grief is going to hit each one of us in some shape or form. So, yeah, that's my story, which I know you all have one too. And hopefully down the road, maybe there's a chance that I will be able to have one of you on and you all can tell me your story. Because the one thing I found, it felt good to tell my story to people. But what did not feel good is when someone, and this is interesting too, because there are times when someone would say to me, oh, I know someone who lost their son who got killed. I'll get you their number. You could talk to him. And you know what I would say? I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to talk. I don't want, because their story is not my story. And I didn't really want to partake in that. So when people would say that to me, I'd say, oh, sure. But then I didn't really, move forward with that. I did not move forward. Anyway, I just want you all to know on this night, I don't know all that you're going through, what type of loss that you are really despondent about, but I know one thing is spiritually, God has brought me through each and every day. He's kept me, he's comforted me through everything. But I've also had the opportunity to speak to therapists and talk to them as well. So you don't want to discount that, because God has gifted the therapists and the doctors and the nurses. He's gifted all of them to do what they do. So practicality, being practical, that's something that you want to do as well, to get out whatever your feelings and things that you hadn't been able to tell that person, that you now have the opportunity. You can write it on paper. My therapist said, just in your journal, just write that letter to the person that you're feeling a certain way about, and let them know how you feel. I was fortunate to have Hollis 36 years. 10 years prior to that, Hollis fell asleep at the wheel coming down 95. Little did we know that we had an additional 10 years with Hollis. Because God knew that when 36 came, that was going to be his end. Something that we never know, because we couldn't handle it if we did. But God gave us an additional 10 years. There's so many things that God has done to bring me through. And I'm so very grateful. So the only way I could get through this is with God. And practical, they always want to know, what practical ways did you get out of it? No matter what, you got to go through the process of the pain. You got to go through it. But through it, you always trust in God, and he continues to bless. Even when you don't feel like you're being blessed, he's blessing. God bless you. God bless you. I hope you come back, because I've got more to share. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Love y'all.